Heading up to the top of Hunter's Peak today. I'll be going up Bear Canyon via the Frijole Trail to get up there. It's like the 6th highest peak in Texas. Pretty expansive views out to the east once you make it up to the top. I'm about to start the Bear Canyon Trail. That's Bear Canyon right there. Honestly, I don't see how they fit a trail in that canyon. It looks so tight. But that trail is infamously known in the Guadalupe Mountains as one of the steepest trails here. In 1.7 miles, I'll gain 1,700 feet. So that's 300 feet taller than the Empire State Building. And that's not counting the 500 feet in elevation gain I got over the 2 miles it took me to get to this spot. So once I get to the top of Bear Canyon, it'll be a short hike, relatively short hike, to get up to Hunter's Peak and the views I get from Hunter's Peak. And I'll also have access to the Bowl Trail at that point, which is a forested trail that I'm looking forward to hiking. Not too many trees around here, and the Bowl is one of the places where there's a forest growing. So I'm gonna take y'all with me as I go up this huffing and puffing trail up Bear Canyon. So more to come. It is a steep slog up this trail. Supposedly there's gonna be some shade. And so if there's any consolation, I'll be able to get out of the sun. I wouldn't want to do this hike in August. It's about mid-50s. There's a slight breeze, and of course it's dry as a bone. But this is a slog. Well, I got to the first nice bit of shade on this trail. Now I know why they call it Bear Trail, because this is one bear of a trail. I bring with me on a dry desert hike like this a gallon of water, because I'll go through it. This is not the most space efficient way of carrying a gallon of water, but this is just a day hike, so I'm not too worried. There's not a whole lot else in my pack besides food. I do carry a lot of food. I brought 6 of these. Costco sells them 6 to a package. I drank a half gallon the first day, another half gallon the second day, but I'm already about a third of the way through this gallon. So I have a feeling I'll finish this gallon today. And then of course I always keep spare water in the car, because you just never know if you're gonna find water on your trailhead or not. And I didn't know much about this part before I got here, so I wanted to make sure I had spare water just in case. Turns out most of the trailheads here do have potable water, so you can refill up. Of course, that's at the beginning or end of your trail. You need it on the trail, and there is no water on the trail. This place is pretty different than the Smokies. The Smokies, you can just carry a filter with you and fill up in streams all along the way. So it's kind of nice because you don't have to carry so much water with you. But in a place like this, there's very little water. You can barely see way down there where I started. You can see those buildings, the highway. Well, right across the highway from those buildings is the visitor center where I started. I hiked through that desert, across that wash, up into this canyon. And it's a beautiful hike, but man, I don't know why they call this Bear Canyon. I don't know if you can see, these are basically stairs behind me. I've gained about a 1,000 feet in elevation, and I guess I have about 1,000 more. I'm about halfway through. It is a steep hike. Well, I'm up to 1,814 feet of elevation, so I've climbed higher than the new World Trade Center in New York City. In fact, I'm higher than the mast that's on top of the new World Trade Center in New York City. So pretty excited to be here. It's man, it is hard, but the views are pretty amazing. And I don't know if you can see the trees, but up here in elevation you get a lot more trees. Now this is a pretty exposed cliff that I'm kind of hiking up, so there's not a lot of trees. I wouldn't call it a forest, but it's pretty nice. I pack a lot of food, and one of my favorite things are these mandarins you can get at Costco. These things really help to give you some carbs and a sugar boost, and I packed 8 of them with me today. This is about 4. I'm gonna probably eat all of them right here, right now, because they taste so good. But I'll make another video here in a little while. In addition to all the other things that you normally have to keep in mind when you're doing a hike, as a type 1 diabetic, I've also got to manage my blood sugar. And what you see here is the graph of my blood sugar over time. My blood sugar is inversely correlated with my elevation gain. So, although it's maybe kind of hard to see, the rise in elevation corresponds to a drop in glucose. So I've got to constantly maintain my glucose values by eating, but fortunately this insulin pump can detect my glucose values and slows down the insulin it gives me to slow the drop of my glucose values. So on a hike like today, the problem is that I don't have enough sugar, not that the sugar's going to be too high. So I constantly have to eat to try to push that glucose up. And fortunately the pump is working with me here to reduce the amount of insulin that it gives me, so my glucose values don't drop too much. Well, I made it to the top of the ridge. I got all the way up Bear Canyon, and let me tell you, it was a bear of a trail. No pun intended. Starting to see a few dark clouds. I don't know if that's going to turn into rain. It's a little bit chilly up here. I want to say it's in the probably high 40s, but that wind is pretty chilly. It feels okay in the sun, but in the shade it's downright cold. You can see down there, you can see the canyon I just came up. That was right at about 2,300 feet, so not quite half a mile high in elevation change. It was a pretty hike up to this point, pretty exposed. There wasn't as much shade as I thought there would be, but that actually ended up being a blessing in disguise, because it was pretty chilly in the shade. It feels good in the sun, but shade is pretty cold. So I'm gonna hike around this forest here and make my way up to Hunter's Peak, and then I'm gonna go back down that Bear Canyon. These pine trees smell so good. The Guadalupe Mountains are the fossilized remains of a coral reef. This land at one point was under the sea. Geologic forces thrust this land up and out above the surface to form these mountains. As you hike these mountains, you can see the fossilized remains of the coral reef in the rocks around you. Here's one of those. Now, I'm no geologist, but apparently these little things that you see in this rock are the fossilized remains of the coral reef that makes up the Guadalupe Mountains. kind of cool to know. Made it to the top of Hunter's Peak, 8,258 feet above sea level. That's Guadalupe Peak just to my right, and El Capitan just to the right of that. It's a windy day today. I find a lot of pretty places when I go hike, but there's not always a good place to sit down, so I bought this lightweight camping chair so I can sit down here among all these beautiful pine trees. It smells amazing, and I'm gonna sit here and eat my lunch today. Man, just a beautiful pine forest up here. I'm in a opening right here, but you can see all around me. It's pretty thick pine trees. Smells amazing. The clouds are kind of rolling in, so the sun's off of me. But it got a little cooler too. Just beautiful up here. Well, I decided to take a different route back to the car. I'm gonna come down the Tejas trail, which ends up in the same place, but a different route. And I'm hoping to get some nice views of some of the peaks, and came across one right now. That's Guadalupe Peak just to my right. So excited for a different change of scenery on the way down. Well, I'm coming down the Bowl Trail. I haven't quite met up with the Tejas Trail. I think it's right up here. But there's Hunter Peak right there to my left. That was the peak that I just did a couple hours ago. On a amazing lookout right here. It's a big drop off behind me. There's Guadalupe Peak, peak I did on Thursday, and just an amazing panorama up here. Really awesome spot. So here's the Tejas Trail that I'll be taking down all the way back to Pine Springs Visitor Center. You can see how the trail winds around. It goes down more or less the same distance as Bear Canyon, but you can see it's a much more gentle drop. So the mileage is going to be higher, but I'm going to have views of Guadalupe Peak to keep me company. Well, I'm back to where I started this morning at the intersection of the Tejas and Frijole Trail 9.5 hours ago. It's been a great day, a great way to end my 3-day stay here in the Guadalupe Mountains. It was a beautiful trip.